two teams they will not question, the White Walkers down in Georgia or the Ohio State Buckeyes. Both these teams, number 1 and number 2, had big blowout wins today, fellas. Georgia, 45-19 against the Mississippi State team that's been known to kind of throw a little bit of a curveball. They had no problem tonight with them. And Ohio State welcomed the Hoosiers, beat them up 56-14. These two have been really consistent. Throw Michigan in there too. Georgia did take a big test already. Ohio State's got its test coming. Are there any notable weaknesses? And I ask you guys that because that's probably what it's going to start to come down to. I saw this out of Georgia, really out of both teams. And Hack, you said this in our group text earlier about CJ Stroud. He's got to pull it a little bit tonight. He's got to pull the ball. He's going to have to be some type of a contributor running the football, and he did. You know who else we saw do that today? Stetson Bennett. Big touchdown run down there in the red zone. He pulled a couple other ones. It's fascinating watching Todd Monken say, you know what? I got a guy that could do a little bit of that. And with all the behemoths Georgia has, and defenses just willingly turn their back because they're covering these guys, Bowers and all these mythical tight ends. Now here comes Bennett burling down the field after you, behind you. So both quarterbacks have not been threats, but they are starting to threaten defenses running the football. Do either of these teams have a notable weakness? Hack?
Yeah.
Trevor?
Yeah, I'll start first. I think Georgia, and this goes back to my previous comments about Georgia being the next dynasty. I think Georgia has firmly fixated themselves as a team and a program that is kind of like that middle ground between college and the NFL right now that Alabama was sitting at, and now Alabama has kind of stepped back from, right? Like they're when they're playing their best, I don't think that there's a team in the country that can keep up with them. Now, it's the challenge of getting a bunch of college kids to consistently do that and to prepare, dealing with all the variables, classroom, and you know, my girlfriend broke up, all the other bullshit that comes along with being a college student, I think is the only thing that can really slow down Georgia at this point in time. With Ohio State, I think the biggest thing is, and it's a shame because they answered some of the bells for me from a running game standpoint early in this game, but then Mayan Williams went down with an ankle injury where he got carted off. I don't know the status of that, but Travion Henderson didn't dress, and they had their other stud running back go down in preseason this year with an ACL injury. So they're down right now 3 in there. I think they have it might be listed a damn punter as a running back right now. So that's why I think it's really important and really vital for this Ohio State team, especially heading into this Michigan game, to have CJ Stroud show a willingness to get involved in the run game, because they got to create it somehow, some way, shape, or form right now, because they've lost a lot. And that's unfortunately part of the game as well, right? Injuries. And I think that that's kind of the only glaring weakness that I can show from this Ohio State team. I think their defense is playing really good. They were getting better and better each week. Obviously, they have some matchup issues with some players and some talent outside, Marvin Harrison Jr. and a guy who we haven't seen. And I don't know if we are going to see him this year. And if we do, it might be even scarier is Jackson Smith and Jigba, who has like 4 catches on the year against Notre Dame. And he's been MIA, whatever he's been nursing and getting right. So if they can add that to the loop, you know, this Ohio State team's really, really explosive. But I think that that's a big thing to watch out for with them up in Columbus.
That's a big point there Trevor Hack gave us about Ohio State's rushing. They are nicked up. I'm looking at the breakdowns now. Even with all of that, they averaged 8 yards a carry tonight. They dedicated 43 rushes at Indiana, and they got 340 yards on the ground. But now it is by committee, and you could kind of do that against Indiana, but you're going to have to find a couple bell cows going forward. Trevor, your impressions of Georgia and the Buckeyes, yes, today, but also going forward, being able to close out their cases.
Yeah, I think Hack made a great point about Georgia. I mean, Stetson Bennett threw a couple interceptions tonight, and it still wasn't even a question. You know, you look at any other team that is that's turning the ball over like Georgia did tonight, and it's a close game if nothing else. But they still ran away with this one in a game that could be marked as, you know, a trap game. I want to give a shout out to Stetson Bennett. Obviously, historical career, the way that he kind of built his way up to be the starting quarterback there. But, last year, beginning of the year, and maybe even at this time, all of us were talking on this show about Stetson Bennett. It's like, man, throw Stetson in there, throw JT Daniels in there. It doesn't matter. It's all about the defense, blah, 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 blah. That young man has stepped up, and he's become a leader of that football team. And even though they had all those guys leave, he is still the guy stepping up and said, hey, I'm here. I'm going to make plays. I'm not going to maybe be in New York for the Heisman Trophy, but I am the leader of this football team. And so I just think the way that he's carried himself and positioned himself as a leader on that team is the reason that they are continuing to be as good as they are. Conversely, with Ohio State, I think the only weakness that they have is if they get in their own way. Hack mentioned it. If they're playing their best football on offense, they can score as many points as they possibly want to, and that's because of CJ Stroud. And I mean, you just look at kind of their stat line throughout the season, man, they're just powerful. Outside of the Northwestern game, they're just powerful on offense. And that's despite not having, like you mentioned, a running game and a running attack that has some depth. It's impressive to watch. But these two teams, in my opinion, are head and shoulders above anybody else in the country. And I know we talk about some of these teams, Tennessee, so on and so forth, that you can make an argument or that tier 2, but these guys are tier 1, and they're up there by themselves and have been since day one.